What if everything you were told about China was wrong? Not a little wrong, completely wrong. You were told China copies things. You were told China makes cheap products. You were told China is just a factory, a big, loud, smoky factory that the world uses and then ignores. But here is the truth nobody is saying out loud. China is not the factory anymore. China is becoming the architect, and the rest of the world, including America, is slowly realizing this. But by the time they fully realize it, it may already be too late. Let me show you something. In 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization. The world celebrated. Western leaders smiled and shook hands. They thought they had won. They thought bringing China into the global system would make China more like them, more open, more dependent, more controllable. But something else happened entirely. China used that moment like a student who gets access to the world's biggest library. It studied everything. It absorbed everything. And then, quietly, without announcement, it started building its own library, a bigger one. By 2004, China was making 9% of the world's manufactured goods. That number sounds small, but fast forward to today, China now makes nearly 30% of everything the world manufactures. That is more than America, Germany, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom combined. Every single one of them, added together, still cannot match what China produces alone. Think about that for one moment. Now here is the question nobody is asking. If China is just a cheap factory, why is every top American company, every European car brand, every tech giant quietly depending on Chinese supply chains to survive? Something does not add up. And that gap between what we are told and what is actually happening is exactly where the real story lives. Now let us talk about technology, because this is where it gets truly uncomfortable. For decades, the story was simple. America invents, China copies. That was the rule. That was the assumption. That was the belief taught in schools, repeated in newspapers, and accepted without question. But in January 2025, a small Chinese company called DeepSeek released an artificial intelligence model. It was faster. It was smarter. And here's the part that shocked Silicon Valley to its core. It was built with a fraction of the chips and a fraction of the money that American AI companies were spending. America had spent years trying to block China from getting advanced chips. It was supposed to slow China down. It was supposed to buy time. Instead, China built a better engine with fewer parts. The day DeepSeek was announced, NVIDIA, the most powerful chip company in the world, lost $600 billion in a single day. Not over a month, not over a year, one single day. It was the largest single-day loss in stock market history. Let that number sit with you. $600 billion gone in one day because of one Chinese AI model. And here's the real question. If America's chip ban was supposed to stop China, and instead China responded by building something better, what does that tell you about how power actually works? This is not about one company or one product. This is about a system, a way of thinking, a long-term strategy that most people are not trained to see. China files 1.7 million patents every single year. America files 600,000. China is producing 4 times more science and engineering graduates than America every year. 4 times. And these are not just numbers on paper. These are the people who will build the next generation of technology, medicine, energy, and weapons. The world is watching the scoreboard. But China is changing the rules of the game. Here's a question for you. And think about this carefully before you answer in the comments. When a country controls what the world is made of, what the world runs on, and what the world learns from, does it even need an army to be the most powerful force on Earth? Think about that. Because the next minutes of this story, the part about energy, minerals, and a network of roads, ports, and deals that stretches across 75% of the world's population, is going to change how you see the map on your wall. The factory became the architect. The student became the teacher. And the world, still looking at old maps, still reading old headlines, has not yet noticed that the building has already been redesigned. There is a mineral sitting under the ground in Congo, Chile, and Australia. You have never thought about it. You have never needed to. But right now, as you watch this video, that mineral is inside your phone, inside your car, inside the satellites passing over your head, and inside the missiles that governments point at each other. It is called rare earth, and China controls 90% of it. not 90% of the mining, not just 90% of the production. China controls 90% of the entire processing chain. The complicated, expensive, chemical-heavy process that turns raw rock into the material that powers the modern world. Without that process, the rock is useless. Without China doing that process, the world stops. And here's the part that should make you pause. This did not happen by accident. China made a decision decades ago, quietly, without press conferences, without headlines, to buy mines, build refineries, and train engineers specifically for this one purpose. While Western countries were focused on oil, China was focused on the minerals that would power the world after oil. They were playing a different game, on a different timeline, and nobody noticed until it was already done. In April 2025, China placed export restrictions on rare earth magnets. Just magnets, that is all. And within days, Ford's factory in Chicago shut down. European car manufacturers stopped their production lines. Defense contractors in America started making emergency calls to government officials. One country, one quiet decision. Entire industries frozen. This is not trade. This is not economics. This is leverage. And China has built more of it, more quietly and more completely than any country in modern history. Now let us move to energy. Because what China has done in green energy is not just impressive. It is almost difficult to believe when you see the numbers together. China manufactures 80% of the world's solar panels. Every 8 out of 10 solar panels installed anywhere on Earth, in Europe, in Africa, in America's own backyard, came from China. China produces 70% of the world's electric vehicles. When you see a Tesla, a BMW electric, or a Hyundai EV on the road, the batteries inside almost certainly came from a Chinese supply chain. China is investing more in nuclear energy than every other country on the planet combined. But here is what most people miss about all of this. Green energy is not just about the environment. Green energy is about who controls the next economy. Oil made the Middle East powerful. Coal made Britain powerful. Whoever controls the energy system of the future controls the politics, the prices, and the pressure points of the entire world. China understood this before anyone else did. And while America was still arguing about climate change being real or not real, China was building the factories, the supply chains, and the technology to own whatever came next, regardless of the argument. Even the CEO of Ford, an American company, an American icon, admitted publicly that China's electric vehicle technology is far superior. He said, and these are serious words from a serious man, that if America loses this race, Ford has no future. The factory of the world became the energy system of the world, and it happened in less than 20 years. Now here is your second question. And this one is for the people who think about the future seriously. If the country that controls rare earth minerals also controls green energy, also controls manufacturing, and also controls the most advanced AI development pipeline, at what point does economic power become something more than just economic? Write your answer. Because what comes next in this story is where it gets truly global. Let us talk about the Belt and Road Initiative, because most people have heard the name. Very few people understand what it actually is. It is not just roads. It is not just ports. It is not just infrastructure loans to poor countries. The Belt and Road Initiative is the largest geopolitical project in human history. China has connected itself through railways, highways, fiber optic cables, shipping ports, and financial agreements to countries that hold 75% of the entire world's population. 3/4 of every human being alive today lives inside China's Belt and Road Network. Think about what that means in simple terms. If you are a farmer in Kenya, your road was built by China. If you are a government official in Pakistan, your power plant was funded by China. If you are a port worker in Greece or Sri Lanka, your port was purchased by China. These are not hypothetical examples. These are real projects in real countries, changing real lives, and building real dependence. 53 out of 54 countries in Africa are now part of the Belt and Road Initiative. 53 out of 54. The entire continent, with its minerals, its young population, its growing economies, is now economically connected to Beijing. And China did not do this with bombs. It did not do this with soldiers. It did it with roads, loans, and long-term patience. But here is what makes this even more powerful. China has signed currency agreements with over 40 central banks around the world. These agreements mean those countries can now buy and sell using the Chinese yuan, not the American dollar, Russia buys oil in yuan. Iran sells goods in yuan. Gulf countries are beginning to consider it. And every country that stops needing dollars is a country that weakens the single most powerful financial weapon America has ever had. The dollar was not just money, it was control. And China is quietly, systematically building a world where that control becomes optional. America built its power on military bases and financial systems. China is building its power on supply chains, energy systems, and economic dependency. And here is the uncomfortable truth. When a country owes you money, buys from you, and cannot function without your minerals and your technology, you do not need a single soldier to have power over them. Here is your third question, the one that historians will debate for the next 100 years. When pressure increases, when economies crash, when wars start, when resources run out, which system survives longer? The one built on military force, or the one built on being impossible to replace? Think carefully. Before we go further, I want you to stop for a moment. Look around you right now. Your phone, your lights, your car outside, the clothes you're wearing, the medicine in your cabinet, the battery in your laptop. Pick any object, any single object within arm's reach, and trace it back. Trace the materials, trace the factory, trace the supply chain. There is a very high chance that somewhere in that chain, the minerals, the processing, the manufacturing, the shipping, China is involved. Not maybe involved. Deeply, structurally, unavoidably involved. This is not a coincidence. This is not luck. This is the result of a plan, a long, patient, generational plan that most of the world was too distracted, too arrogant, or too comfortable to notice while it was happening. And now we are living inside the result. Let us go back in history for just one moment. Not ancient history, recent history. Because there is a pattern here that most analysts miss, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. In the 1980s, Japan was the country everyone feared. Japanese cars were taking over American roads. Japanese electronics were filling American homes. American politicians held press conferences, smashing Japanese televisions with hammers. Economists wrote books saying Japan would own the 21st century. Then America made a decision. In 1985, through something called the Plaza Accord, America pressured Japan to raise the value of its currency. It sounded like a financial agreement. It was actually a trap. Japan's exports became expensive overnight. Its economy slowed, its property market crashed, and Japan spent the next 3 entire decades, in economic stagnation. America had done this before, and it worked. So when China started rising, America tried the same playbook: tariffs, chip bans, currency pressure, trade wars, diplomatic isolation. The tools were the same, the intention was the same, but China had studied Japan's mistake very carefully, very deliberately. China did not allow its currency to float freely. China did not become dependent on American consumers alone. China built its own domestic market, 1.4 billion people who could buy Chinese products even if the rest of the world closed its doors. China diversified its relationships across Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East so that no single country, not even America, could pull one string and collapse the entire system. China did not just build an economy. It built an economy that was designed from the beginning to survive American pressure. And that changes everything. Now let us talk about something that nobody in mainstream media is talking about clearly enough. China is not just competing with America. China is building a parallel world. Think about what that means in real terms. America has SWIFT, the global financial messaging system that controls international money transfers. If America wants to cut a country off from the global economy, it removes them from SWIFT. This is what happened to Iran. This is what happened to Russia after 2022. It is one of the most powerful financial weapons ever created. China has been building CIPS, its own international payment system, quietly, steadily, without headlines. And every country that joins CIPS is a country that can survive without SWIFT, a country that America can no longer easily punish. America has GPS, the satellite navigation system that the entire world depends on for everything from shipping routes to military targeting. China has BeiDou, its own satellite navigation system, now fully operational, covering the entire globe. Countries inside China's Belt and Road Network are already switching their systems to BeiDou. They no longer need American satellites to function. America has Hollywood, the soft power machine that exported American culture, American values, and American idealism to every corner of the world for 100 years. China has been building its own cultural export system, through TikTok reaching 1.5 billion users worldwide, through Chinese streaming platforms expanding across Southeast Asia and Africa, through Confucius institutes and universities across 160 countries, teaching Mandarin and Chinese history to the next generation of global leaders. Do you see the pattern? Every single system that gave America global power, financial, navigational, cultural, technological, China has built an alternative, not a copy, an alternative, a parallel structure that works independently and pulls countries away from American dependency one relationship at a time. This is not competition. This is architectural. China is not trying to win America's game. China is building a different stadium entirely. Now, let us talk about the military, because you cannot discuss global dominance without it. But the story here is more nuanced than most people realize. China's military budget is the second largest in the world. Its navy has more ships than the United States Navy. It has the world's largest standing army. It has hypersonic missiles that can travel at 5 times the speed of sound, missiles that current American defense systems cannot reliably intercept. But here is the detail that most military analysts quietly acknowledge behind closed doors. China has not fought a major war since 1979, not once in 45 years. And this is not weakness, this is strategy. While America spent $8 trillion on wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, wars that destabilized regions, created enemies, and produced no lasting strategic advantage, China spent those same decades building ports, funding universities, signing trade deals, and training engineers. America exported soldiers. China exported infrastructure. And at the end of those decades, America had a tired military and a divided country. China had a global network and a unified direction. Sun Tzu, the Chinese military philosopher who lived 2,500 years ago, wrote something that Chinese leadership clearly took seriously. He wrote that the greatest victory is the one achieved without fighting. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without any battle. China did not learn this as a historical quote. China is living it as a current strategy. But now we must be honest, because intellectual honesty is what separates real analysis from propaganda, and this channel will always choose honesty. China has real problems, serious ones. China's population is aging faster than almost any country in history. The one-child policy that ran from 1980 to 2015 created a demographic time bomb. Too many old people, not enough young workers to support them. By 2050, China will have more people over 60 than the entire current population of the United States. China's property market, which represented nearly 30% of its entire economy, has been in crisis. Major developers have collapsed. Millions of apartments were sold but never built. Local governments borrowed money they cannot repay. This is not a small problem. This is a structural wound that will take decades to heal. China's political system, where one party controls everything, where information is filtered, where scientists and entrepreneurs can disappear if they challenge the wrong person, creates a kind of innovation ceiling. The most creative, most disruptive thinking often comes from chaos, from disagreement, from the freedom to be completely wrong in public. China's system controls too much of that chaos to fully unleash it, and Taiwan remains the single most dangerous flashpoint on the planet. If China moves militarily on Taiwan, and the pressure to do so is real and growing, the global economic consequences would make the COVID pandemic look like a minor disruption. Supply chains would shatter. Semiconductor production, most of the world's advanced chips come from Taiwan, would collapse. And a military conflict of that scale could pull every major power into the most dangerous confrontation since World War II. These are not small challenges. They are not easy to solve. And any honest analysis of China's future must hold these realities alongside the extraordinary strengths we have discussed. So where does this leave us? Where does this leave the world? Here is the first takeaway. And remember this clearly. Power in the 21st century does not look like power in the 20th century. It does not announce itself with bombs and flags and victory parades. It arrives quietly, through supply chains, through financial systems, through infrastructure deals, through the slow accumulation of dependencies that nobody notices until they are already dependent. China understood this before anyone else did, and it built accordingly. Here is the second takeaway. The competition between China and America is not simply a competition between two countries. It is a competition between two completely different models of how power is organized. America's model is built on individual freedom open markets, military alliances, and the dollar. China's model is built on state direction, long-term planning, economic dependency networks, and patience measured in decades, not election cycles. Both models have strengths. Both models have failures. But only one of them has been consistently executing its plan for 30 years without interruption. And consistency, in systems, in strategy, in civilizations, is almost always more powerful than brilliance. Here is the third takeaway. The one that matters most, regardless of where you live or what you believe. The shift is already happening. This is not a future event. This is a present reality. The question is not whether China will become more powerful. The question is whether the rest of the world, governments, businesses, ordinary people, will understand what kind of power this is, how it actually works, and what it means for the choices they make in the next 10 years. Because the next 10 years will determine the shape of the next 100. And now, one final thought, the one that I want you to carry with you after this video ends. Every great power in history believed, at the peak of its confidence, that its system was permanent, that its model was the correct one, that the future belonged to it by right, by design, by the natural order of things. Rome believed it, Britain believed it, the Soviet Union believed it, America believed it, and China, right now at this very moment, believes it too. History does not promise permanence to anyone, not to empires, not to systems, not to the most carefully constructed plans. History only promises change, and the only people who navigate change successfully are the ones who see it coming before it arrives, who study the patterns, who read the systems, who refuse to be comforted by yesterday's map when tomorrow's territory is already being redrawn. You watched this video because something in you wanted to understand. Not to be told what to think, but to see more clearly. That instinct is rare, and it is exactly the right instinct for the world we are entering. If you want to keep seeing clearly, subscribe. Because the next story we tell will be just as important and just as uncomfortable. The world is being redesigned. The only question is whether you understand the blueprint.